As the world moves further away from the commandments of God, the apostles' role will be increasingly important.
One of the most defining characteristics of those in the great and spacious building is that they gathered together to fight against the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Why did the great and spacious building fall? It had no foundation. The pride of the world always falls. Their party was so fun it literally brought the house down. Well, yes, but there might be more than meets the eye. Today we're going to dive into a couple of verses in 1 Nephi chapter 11 and chapter 15 that I think are interesting and hopefully thought-provoking in terms of apostles, doctrine, and you and me. By the way, my name is Will Perez and welcome to Latter-day Divers, where we dive into the words of ancient and modern prophets. Let's get right to it. You ready? Let's dive. So the go-to interpretation for the great and spacious building in Lehi's dream is that it represents the pride of the world. For sure, they are puffed up, mocking others, the opposite of God's love as manifested at the tree. But what exactly does that mean or look like for us? Nephi gives a very interesting definition or characteristic of those in the great and spacious building and why it falls. I beheld that they were in a large and spacious building, like unto the building which my father saw. And the angel of the Lord spake unto me again, saying, Behold the world and the wisdom thereof, yea, behold the house of Israel hath gathered together to fight against the 12 apostles of the Lamb. And it came to pass that I saw and bare record, that the great and spacious building was the pride of the world, and it fell, and the fall thereof was exceedingly great. And the angel of the Lord spake unto me again, saying, Thus shall be the destruction of all nations, kindreds, tongues, and people that shall fight against the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Whoa, so this goes a little deeper than the basic pride of the world answer. Nephi writes that one of the defining characteristics of those in the great and spacious building is that they are gathered to fight against the 12 apostles of the Lamb. Now, I'm not going to try to define what that means, but we know that in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, we believe that Jesus Christ has once again called 12 apostles to be special witnesses of Him, to teach the fullness of His gospel, and to administer the affairs of the church. Clearly, since the church was restored in 1830, Latter-day apostles have faced opposition. It's especially sad when some of the most bitter opposition comes from within the church, or the house of Israel, like Nephi said. There's definitely a warning here for Latter-day Saints, Latter-day Israel. But what does it mean to fight against the 12 apostles of the Lamb? Does it mean simply to disagree with them? Does it mean to not like their social media posts? Either way, I'm reminded of Brigham Young's famous statement.
Cut the thread that binds you to the prophet of God, and sink yourselves to hell.
Okay, let's put a pin in that one for now and go to 1 Nephi 15, verse 14. Speaking of our time, of the restoration of the knowledge of the gospel filling the earth, Nephi wrote, Wherefore they shall come to the knowledge of their Redeemer, and the very point of his doctrine, that they might know how to come unto him and be saved. I have long been fascinated by this line, that they might come unto the Redeemer and the very point of his doctrine. Now, we love Jesus. We want everyone to know about Jesus, but it seems that it's possible to know and love Jesus without really understanding his doctrine.
Whatever.
And without understanding the very points of his doctrine, what he actually taught, how to truly come unto him, what his church and ordinances are, how will we fully access his atoning power and salvation?
And they don't think I know a buttload of crap about the gospel, but I do.
And this might actually help answer the why we need a church question. It's not enough merely to come to a knowledge of Jesus. We need to come to a knowledge of the correct points of his doctrine to fully access his atoning power and the gift of eternal life that he offers to the sons and daughters of God. And this brings us back to apostles. Apostles in the Latter-day Saint tradition are sustained as prophets, seers, and revelators. They are special witnesses of Jesus Christ, and they teach his doctrine. Check out what Elder Neil Anderson told religious educators about apostles and prophets and doctrine last year.
The doctrine of Christ is found in the scriptures and in the teachings of the prophets, whose responsibility it is to communicate the will of the Lord. The doctrine in the scriptures and taught by the prophets includes the principles of multiple witnesses, a principle you've heard often in General Conference and one I shared more than 10 years ago. A few question their faith when they find a statement made by a church leader decades ago that seems incongruent with our doctrine. There's an important principle that governs the doctrine of the church. The doctrine is taught by all 15 members of the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12. It is not hidden in an obscure paragraph of one talk. True principles are taught frequently and by many. Our doctrine is not difficult to find.
So, if the Book of Mormon was written for our day, and the Great and Spacious Building represents Israel coming together to fight against the 12 apostles of the Lamb, could it be a warning for us, or at least, and maybe even more so, an invitation to take the apostles and the doctrine that they teach a little more seriously? Granted, nobody is saying that they teach the doctrine perfectly. There's always a human element to receiving and sharing revelation. But until we figure it all out, at least for me, I don't want to be labeled as someone who fights against the 12 apostles of the Lamb. I don't know what that looks like for you. I don't even think there's only one way to interpret that. But I am grateful for apostles of Jesus Christ and for the doctrine of Christ that they teach. We read that Laman and Lemuel murmured because they knew not the dealings of God. Isaiah writes elsewhere that at some point those who murmured will learn doctrine. Maybe if I paid a price spiritually to more truly receive his doctrine, I would be less tempted to murmur against the special witnesses of Christ. And back to Elder Anderson for the last word.
The Lord's directions for questions and concerns in our modern world come from those who have been ordained with apostolic authority. If confidence in the prophets and apostles is waning, the distractions, the misdirections, the sophistries of the world can detach one from his or her spiritual moorings. Eagerly anticipate General Conference and discuss the important teachings that follow. Clearly identify the sacred role of the Lord's anointed. As the world moves further away from the commandments of God, the apostles' role will be increasingly important.
And that's a wrap for today. Thank you for diving with me. I would love your thoughts. What do you think about this video? What do you think it means to fight against the 12 apostles of the Lamb? Surely there is space in the kingdom for questioning or even disagreeing with prophets and apostles. But what does it mean that they teach his doctrine, and when Israel fights against them, Israel falls? And how else would you read this? Thanks for sharing, for engaging. I look forward to reading your comments. Subscribe. Come back soon for another episode of Latter-day Divers.